it's old fumble fingers again. Here we go. Hopefully everything is working, except I've punched the wrong button again. Here we go. Let's just do a proper intro, shall we? Yes. Oh, yeah, they call me Mr. Keith. That's what they've called me in many good parts of the world. And that's having watched Virgil Tibbs, a.k.a. Sidney Poitier, in the heat of the night not too long ago. And Sidney Poitier passed away last week. I thought I recalled being called that because I thought it was a very powerful line, that movie. Strange when powerful lines are just single ones and very simple. But there we go. Now, we hope that we're going to have Fergus join us this morning, but everything's been a bit up in the air because I've been a bit unwell, and I wanted to make sure that I hadn't got COVID and that I wasn't going to end up in hospital or that I was going to pass it on and so on and so forth. The unfortunate thing is it looks as if I'm in rude health, that I'm back to my old self again, which means a lot of yelling and screaming and stamping of little feet. But perhaps what we will do is we will go straight to straight to the papers this morning. It is 3 minutes past 8. We're broadcasting from Lewes, which is the county town of East Sussex in the United Kingdom, because we have quite a few overseas viewers. And I'm happy to say that they and there I've got something there. Fergus is here. So before I go through the papers, I'll join Fergus. Just to tell you that it's going to hit 10 degrees today, which is quite mild compared to lately. We have got a bit of a drizzle, and indeed it is a drizzle out there already. But the breeze is very, very mild, and my trusty trees that tell me what the weather is like, are ecstatic. So let's see if we have got. There he is, Fergus. Good morning, Fergus.
Morning, Keith. How you doing?
All right, a little better now. I had a very bad weekend, but I think I picked up a bit of a cold rather than the dreaded lurgy. So I'm back in fighting form and my usual yapping at anything in sight. How about you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm in good health as well. Yeah. Sounds like I had what you had last week, which is the reason. I think.
yeah. Right after Christmas, how anybody believe that?
Yeah.
And in the wine business.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So Christmas meal was good, was it?
It was very nice. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, very got very plump anyway, and yeah, drank quite a lot. So it was good. It was good. But now on the health kick and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we'll get there.
Right. Now we're going to take a look at the papers because poor old Boris is taking a pasting for having a party a year ago. But tell me this, because there are mixed messages still coming out of the government. Things are going to be eased. You don't have to take certain tests anymore. The isolation period, or whatever you call it, is down to 5 days. It looks as if it's over. But then again, you get cautions from the scientific community that says, no, hang on. Yes, it has dipped. The figures have dipped. But they could come surging back. Now, you and I have no way of saying who is right. But this, once again, uncertainty, what sort of effect is it having on the small businessman?
It's just like a annoying lingering thought, really, that you've got to. It just because it's sort of not really being done or anything, or nothing's happening. You're sort of going on the assumption that it's just going to stay the same as they suggest. But then, like over the last year and a half, 2 years, I think it's given the time length they've given small businesses to change around if things have got hit the pan. It's it's just an annoying, lingering thought, really. So
Yeah. So when they're talking about the markets and share prices and so on and so forth, they use the word as they've discounted this. In other words, not paying too much attention to certain factors as far as the economy is concerned. So would you
yeah.
say that now we've got to the point where business is really shrugging its shoulders and saying that same old thing, let's ignore it, let's discount it?
I don't really know, to be honest with you. I mean, the way the stock market does work, it should is factored in the future anyway, and so it's yeah. Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest with you. I can't really answer that question.
but you feel that it's not having quite the effect on you now that it did have when we first entered into this.
Not really, no. If anything, like being an online wine business, the pubs and restaurants being closed could be is more likely to be beneficial if people continue drinking at the same rate. But then equally, a lot of our wines are featured in restaurants around the UK, and so it's also when people find a wine that they try in a restaurant and they try and look for it online, they'll then find it via us, and so that's also a good way to get new customers. So it's I think it works both ways, basically. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It swings and roundabouts. One man's meat is another man's poison. Yeah. Right. Okay. Let's take a look at poor old Boris, who's getting himself into right muck every time he turns. But even some of the Daily Express, which is normally a paper that would support Boris, is its headline this morning is "Enough, Boris! You must end Partygate farce now." Now, as I understand the story, really, they're talking about a party of 100 people where it was bring your own booze, and this was right in the middle of the first lockdown, which I would assume means about a year ago. So how does he end a Partygate farce now if it took place a year ago? I mean, I'm finding the attacks on him very strange. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it does seem. I guess there's just still because there was that Partygate before Christmas as well. And I don't think that was. I think they're probably. I think that was just swept under the rug, or just sort of another news story came in and distracted everything. So I think maybe they're just trying to poke the bear again and okay, what is actually going on here? Why is there one rule for you and one rule for everybody else? It's a bit like the whole, I mean, you'll probably go on to the Djokovic thing soon, but it's similar to that story, mate.
Well, I haven't actually heard what's happened to Djokovic. I obviously yesterday saw that the government had lifted it, so I'll leave you to tell that story after we've gone through the papers. The Daily Mail it is following it. Now, you never know with the Mail whether it's going to support Boris or support the government, or whether he's going to have a go at him. But he says, Boris rocked by new party revelations. Well, yes, they are new revelations, but it's not a new party. Is everybody being slightly dishonest here?
I don't know enough about it, unfortunately.
You weren't at the party?
No.
Yeah. The reason I ask you these things is I'm not trying to be difficult but I mean, let me put it this way. In some ways, you and I would be just average people, average citizens. And I try to get a feel for how these things affect the average citizen. And it may well be that a lot of people take exactly the view that you just expressed is, look, I don't know a lot about it, so to hell with it. It's not bothering me. If that's the case, then once again, and I hate it when people say it's all the fault of the media, but I wonder whether, in fact, is my own profession is scrabbling a bit here to find headlines where nothing much is happening elsewhere.
Yeah, you could probably say that. Yeah, yeah. I think that probably is the case. I mean, yeah. I mean, British media has got its own, has its own. Well, everybody knows that it's not. Yeah, it looks for headlines rather than, but in certain papers it looks for headlines rather than post something read worthy anyway. And so yeah, you never know. It could be. I mean, yeah, maybe it's an interesting one. I don't really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're saying that it's not real concern to you, I'm sure that any poll you would represent a few thousand people. So it's interesting that it's not getting you as excited as it is the other members of our society, if you like, the press. Now, Mirror, invite to do what you like. Now, I'm not. Oh, so that also having a go on the party. Apparently, this was bring your own bottle thing, and 100 people were invited, and the memo has only just come to light. So before, what Westminster and the government has argued is this was a working party. We just happened to have a gin and tonic on the table because we quite often do. Very nice, nice work if you can get it. But what the Mirror is saying is, hang on, this was a bit different. This was a definite invitation. Bring your own bottle because there's 100 of you and you're going to have a hell of a party. And I would imagine that if you're invited to a party at number 10 or in Parliament, is that if there are 100 invitations, the chances are you get 99, at least 99 saying, yes, it's okay. I'm going to go.
Yeah.
The Mirror, they can't wait to have a go at the government, as you well know. The Times, the pressure mounts for 5 days of isolation. Now they're getting back into the real COVID thing. Is that the suggestions are that the worst is over. Now the scientific community are being careful. Some MPs and some parliamentarians are being careful, but generally speaking, I think the cabinet and Boris are very, very concerned that the economy is taking a hit, but also they're standing in the polls because a lot of people are blaming them for the lockdown. Whether that's the case or not, I'm not going to make a comment. But it does seem as if we're easing towards an easier way of life, if you like.
I think so. Yeah. When I write a weekly newsletter for my company every single week, and it's usually put on a Monday. And I wanted to make it I feel like January is a gloomy month. It's a very gloomy month with weather and just after the celebrations of Christmas and all that sort of stuff. And I was trying to think of the positive side of what January is all about. And then, yeah, I just think it does seem to be on a more upward turn. I think booster vaccinations. So people on their third jab, I think 60% of adults have now had it, which I think is incredible. I think first jabs are about 92% and second jabs are like 88% of all adults. So I think there are a lot of positives to take from it. And I'm not a scientist, but from reading the Times, it does seem like that this new variant is not going to get any worse, or at least it's only going to weaken itself as it develops and become the general cold, or something similar along those lines. So at least with the vaccinations that we've got, so it does seem that we are on a certain we're on a more positive path anyway than we have ever been, which is quite nice. So
yeah,
I think and
the thing that bothers me a little bit still, because looking at my craggy face, I was not born in the computer generation, is that everybody has been urging me, NHS, absolutely everybody, please take one of these lateral tests or whatever. So I go to the chemist, and there's a big notice, we have no lateral tests. I go online, everybody says, oh, go online. I go online, and eventually I get something back that says, we haven't got any, so we're washing your hands of your case. But here is a number for you to take to the chemist, and you can pick up a lateral test there. But they haven't got any lateral tests. So, once again, to me, they keep on shooting themselves in the foot after doing so much good work in getting the vaccinations around.
Yeah, there's a lot of because that was a big fast before Christmas, wasn't it? Everybody wanted to get the lateral flow, so that I guess for the peace of mind that if you were visiting families, you could take one beforehand and then go to see them, and you would be safe in if you did them correctly. And yeah, it just seemed like someone down the line hadn't really thought about what the people's reaction would be, and there clearly just wasn't enough supply to meet demand, or sort of where's this missing email?
The trouble is they make you feel so ashamed that you haven't done it, and yet it's their fault that you can't. And you're quite right. I think the logistics it's easy to say do something, but you will know, being in a small business, is you can say I'll do this, but then you've got to find a way to actually action it and implement it.
Yeah, actions definitely speak louder than words at the end.
Certainly do. Anyway, the
Come on.
Times says that pressure mounts for 5 days of isolation, which adds to what you just said. Is generally speaking, you're getting the feeling that things are easing a wee bit, because it was 10 days, and then it was 7 days, and now they're saying let's go down to 5 days, and there's some suggestion that that will be implemented. I suppose that the next step is, there's no point in going down to 3 days. I suppose the next step is to say don't isolate at all.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's got to be. Well, yeah, I'm not quite. Again, I haven't looked into the science of it, but I'm not quite sure why we're now down to 5 or half of what the original isolation period would be. So, yeah, I can't really particularly provide much insight.
Well, I think that it's the overall suggestion from most of the media that what we're viewing is the situation with lockdown and restrictions and so on easing, because the number of cases of the variant are also easing. So if that picture keeps up, presumably we'll start to see people back on the streets, will we? Or have people really got into the habit of being at home a lot more than they ever were?
It's interesting. I don't know. It's whether, I think people, especially when you walk around Lewes, it still does seem quite lively. Even on the Saturday markets, they're still pretty lively. It's a little bit noticeable on the roads. For instance, where at Earwig Corner, where they put in the new traffic lights over there. I think they were going. I think pre-lockdown, that would have been a good intervention to do, to like stem the flow of traffic. And even if there are going to be new housing in Ringmer, but at the moment, whenever you drive through there, it does just seem like it's a not very busy junction. It's not really. There's not. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. I don't really know. It depends.
So that is an interesting observation, and in fact, crossing Lewes High Street on School Hill is not difficult. And I should tell people the experience that I've had with Fergus is that he is actually reflecting what's happening in Lewes, because we held a little committee meeting the other day where he was walking along with a very good-looking companion, and we stopped and had a little committee meeting on the street, and it was quite lively. It was quite nice. So we were both out that day.
Yes.
Okay. Now, my favorite Daily Star. The boffins say the common cold helps beat COVID. Now, you always have to be careful with the Star, because it's great for headlines and short on news. But if in fact catching a cold can offset the variant, that's good news, because I think I had a cold over the weekend, which means that I've got something else in my arsenal. I've had all the jabs that anybody could ask me to have. I have struggled to try and test to see whether I've got any COVID lingering around. But if I've had a cold, and it patently was a cold, it was nothing more, then I'm in good shape.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a bit like your children. You try and get your children to play out in the dirt to try and build up that. And I think it's just the adult version of it, or that's what they're trying to relate to the people who read are.
Hey, actually, once again, that is a bit confusing. Please lock yourself down, isolate yourself, lock yourself away. Oh, by the way, it's very good for you if you can go out and walk. Well, it's very difficult to go out and walk without bumping into other people. And I know that one of the things that has changed in our society is you see somebody coming along that you know, and instead of rushing up and shaking hands or hugging or whatever we do nowadays, is you actually circumvent them. Say, hello, hello, hello. Yeah.
There's that still that sort of weird, you don't know whether to go, to go give them a hug. I'm very, before I'm very much like a handshake man, but now it's always very much like a fist bump or that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So, you're not huggy touchy.
No, I am very a huggy touchy person, but I don't know. It's just this time round, I don't know. It's clearly three.
It's just the old this or the elbow or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. I don't know what. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody
So,
really looks quite self-conscious when they decide to do the elbow thing.
yeah, I'm
You know,
not that
I mean, it just
thrilled.
doesn't come naturally to us, does it?
No.
Now, here's a bit in the Daily Telegraph. It's the cabinet anger over misleading isolation guidance, and what the paper is reporting is that that the scientific community actually got some figures wrong. And they knew that they got it wrong, and they'd handed stuff over to the cabinet, knowing it's wrong, on the basis that you know, there was longer lockdowns and more stringent conditions than there might have been if they hadn't have had this information. So now that's going to be another row, I would have thought, is if in fact they got it wrong, then we really are likely to, I would think, see a right royal row, which will spread throughout people. Because people, I think, tried hard to follow the rules and regulations. But if it turns out that the rules and regulations weren't necessary, I can see a lot of people being quite upset.
Yeah, but it's there's a lot of things you can look back in hindsight. I think it's just a thing of hindsight. I think taking an overly cautious view was probably the correct thing. And if anything, they were criticised, weren't they, for not locking down earlier and not doing anything earlier, in comparison to everybody else. So I think hindsight's a very nice thing to have, but I think it's just one of the
Right.
one of those basically.
Yeah. The Sun. Don't be a Novak, get boosted. Ha ha. Right. Now, they obviously are playing on the tennis thing in Djokovic thing in Australia, and you wanted to have a comment on that. So we only got one more paper to go, and then we'll come back and let's hear your views on the Djokovic situation, and perhaps give us the latest, because I didn't see it this morning. I was really looking at the headlines. Naughty boy. The Guardian, furious email reveals number 10, bring your own booze lockdown party. Well, one would expect that. The Eye, bring your own booze, same theme. The Metro, the Metro, Novak's back on court. But then they go to the Downing IT Street or its street. So that's just the Financial Times is Moscow threatens to walk out as the Ukraine talks remain deadlocked. Now that's something that keeps on escaping people's minds. Is that you know, we could be at war if we're not careful. And I think that I've lost the stuff, but never mind. I think that one of the things that it could change our way of life is we may not go to war. And I think that you made this point, and I think Andrew made the point last week, is surely our leaders are sensible enough not to engage in a nuclear war. But there are lots of things below nuclear that are pretty nasty. And of course, because of COVID and because of drinks at number 10 and so on and so forth, we've lost sight of this. But I think I said to you, and I certainly said to our viewers, that I spent some time in Ukraine, in this very area on the Russian border. So I know it a bit. And actually, there are a lot of Ukrainians who are very sympathetic to the Federation, because once the EU took over the Ukraine, or they became a member of the EU, and the open market kicked in, a lot of them lost their jobs. And they made a direct comparison: is, hey, when we were under the Soviet Union, we all got work, and now we're all out of work. I mean, the fact that probably they would all have been out of work anyway if they'd have stayed in the Soviet Union is beside the point. There's a lot of ill feeling there, and I think that we've got to be very careful that there isn't some encouragement of the Russians to actually dip their toe further than we in the West think. Does that bother you, this idea that we may be in conflict?
It does a little bit. It's very interesting. I think, yeah, it's an interesting one. I find the Russian thing. I think there's something. Yeah, I mean, they're notoriously put in a dark light anyway, the Russians, but they do seem to be creating more of a stir, or being more provocative than necessary, and especially with earlier on in the week as well, or last week or over the weekend with the submarine. hitting one of our Royal Navy vessels as well over in the Atlantic, and then when they were searching for, well, doing in the Atlantic, yeah, I think they were in Atlantic. They were looking for pipes or internet cables along the Atlantic Ocean, and you're like, okay, well, it just seems a little bit suspect, basically. So, and even the whole Ukraine thing, and if what you say is true, that they are, that some Ukrainians did like the under the Russian, like the Russian support and everything, and that they were um they did lose their jobs when they joined the EU, then I mean that's just that's a fact of life, unfortunately. Sometimes if they do move on, you have to, and you do lose your job, and it's probably because, well, the industry that you're in and the country you're in is inefficient, and so it's just got to move to a more efficient area. And that's just basic economics at the end of the day. And so it's just, I think it's the frustration and perhaps, yeah, having to reskill. It must be the support from the Ukraine government to then possibly isolate these workers, to then say, okay, we're not going to give you any support, we're not going to give you any retraining. It's probably where the frustration lies. It's probably a little bit frustrating having to lose your job to another country, or because they are more efficient at it. But I think it's, yeah, you just got to be, if you can get a more skilled labor force as well, and the government can offer that support. It's probably, yeah, and so it's probably down again. I don't know the ins and outs, and this, yeah, it's probably the help from the EU that should have helped these Ukrainian people to move on, or if, yeah. So it does, the whole Russian thing does um, worry me in certain aspects, because they have been there for ages, and especially when it did flare off. I think it was in 2014 or 2015 with the Crimea crisis and all that sort of stuff, and it seems like they've now rekindled that flame and put extra hundreds of troops near the border. It does just seem like they're just being an annoying protagonist,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, I'm not trying to be alarmist, but I do think it's something that we should keep our eye on, because it is real, and it is difficult. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Moscow, not in the past 5 years, but previous to that, I went to Moscow a lot between 1990. Well, actually, I first went there in 1975, when it was still the Soviet Union. But very frequently in the last decade, I was there a great deal, and I got a feel for what Mr. Putin is like, and he is a bit of an adventurer, and he does have very much the old KGB mentality. Is if you hit first, people find it difficult to strike back. So there are one or two worries in my mind. As I say, I don't want to be alarmist, but I think it's just something we need to keep our eye on. Right, Fergus, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, it's now 29 minutes past 8, and it's going to reach 10 degrees today. It's drizzly a bit outside, but a gentle breeze. Not a nice day, but not a nasty one either. So let's just, we'll take a pause and look at something nice. And then when I come back, I'm going to ask you about Mr. Djokovic, the latest, and your views on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lovely part of Lewis, and when you want to take the pressure off, that's the place to go. I didn't do it much this past summer because of the peculiarity of lockdown and so on and so forth, but the Notts Garden there used to be my summer office, and I could tuck myself away very, very quiet, very, very nice, very, very serene, and you could work away and nobody goes in and makes a noise. Rather a pleasant outdoor office. Perhaps this coming year, if it's a decent summer, I'll try it again. Anyway, let us go to sport, if it is sport, and the situation in Australia, which has many ramifications. And Fergus, you asked about it earlier and said that you've been watching it. So what is the latest and what's your view on what's happening in Australia with Mr. Djokovic?
See, I only read the papers, so I don't know, and that was yesterday about him now being allowed in and being allowed to participate in the Australian Open. But yeah, it does seem just a little bit suspect, the whole thing, especially when you look at I've read somewhere on Facebook about the timeline of Djokovic and his how he's got permission from the Australian Tennis Federation and it's all just, yeah, it just seems a little bit suspect how the timings of it and everything like that, because apparently when he got COVID it was on the 16th of December, so then he had to isolate and do all that sort of stuff, but then subsequent days after that he was also doing in-person stuff in Serbia where he's from, and also even though he might have got it signed off from medical professionals as something that he's allowed to do, the actual sign-off date with the tennis association in Australia was at the start of December as well. So he submitted this application far later than when it should have been, and it got accepted anyway. And then even just from the Australian government, I've got friends and family over in Australia talking about it, and it seems like it's also another distraction topic from the situation that's going over in Australia, where they can't get any more tests or anything like that. A bit similar to us, but in a much worse situation where they can't secure any testings, like lateral flow tests, and the whole situation has just gone Pete Tong basically. So yeah, it just does seem like one rule for Djokovic and the amount of money that he has and the influence, and perhaps and then one rule for everybody else. It does seem a little. It's not. I like Djokovic. I think he's a fantastic tennis player. I think he's great. I feel like he's going to face quite a large wrath of negativity when he's playing, basically.
How do you say you've checked with the relatives that you have there? What's their feeling about this? The sort of what should we say? Favoritism has come into play.
A little bit, sort of. They just don't. The Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia, he just they just think he's a bit useless, to be honest with you. They call him his nickname is called Scotty from marketing, because one of his first jobs was in marketing, and it just seems like an absolute clown. So
it's all around, isn't it?
Yeah. So they think this whole farce with Djokovic as well is just a big distraction thing, basically, from his leadership.
Well,
so.
I was quite interested watching yesterday morning on a report, and it came in sort of almost just as we were going on the air yesterday at about 10 to 8 on the BBC, and they rushed it through to say that he had been allowed in, or the judge had quashed the decision by the government. But I pointed out the report said that here were his supporters, and they were all really very enthusiastic that he could now play tennis and so on. I noted two things. First of all, the flag that was being waved was the Serbian flag, not the Australian flag, and that the dance that was being done is a dance that is widespread throughout the Balkans. And with all due respect, as you know, I love the Balkans. I mean, I think they're lovely, lovely people in many respects. Not their leadership, but the average person. But they have this dance, which it goes on for hours if you wanted to, and you can opt in and opt out. And basically all they do, they shuffle around with about 3 steps. It's like watching paint dry or grass grow. I said that that dance was very typical. So in other words, they were very ethnic supporters, which means that I think that the report was a bit suspect. So the fact that you're giving some reaction from your relatives who, as I would say, it react. The important thing about you and your reports is you give something that not as a professional journalist. Mine can sometimes be quite different because of what I am, and yours are very much down to earth. So I thought, hang on, this isn't exactly all that it appears. So the fact that you're saying your relatives and the useless prime minister have got a different approach is quite important, I think.
Yeah, I think we need a demonstration from you with this dance as well, Keith. Yeah.
Well, actually, I have done it, and sometimes somebody in it has a little handkerchief. It goes like this, and they do it at big family occasions and at weddings and so on, because there are lots of people there. But believe me, you have a very strong urge to get to the bar. It is not the most exciting bop in the world. I mean, I am known for once in a while when I take the head staggers of doing silly things like dancing or singing on air, which is absolutely awful. But perhaps I will demonstrate it one day just to show what it's all about. I'm going to lose a lot of friends in Kosovo, that's for sure. They'll say, Mr. Keith, why were you doing that? Why were you poking fun at our traditions? But it is an awful dance. It really is. Tell me now, Fergus, because I know you're a sportsman. You're a rugby player. You're young. You're healthy. What are you? 24. You're very active. And actually, unless there is a COVID issue, it seems that sport gets pushed off the headlines as well. And tell us what's going on in the sporting world that is catching your eye. And are there any sort of big controversies that we have had in the past that are building up to where people are going to say, ooh, ah?
Not that I know of at the moment. There's nothing that's caught my eye particularly. There's not no, I don't think so. Like, no, there's not. I don't think there's anything particularly exciting going on in football at the moment. Neither rugby. I think tennis is probably the one that's taken all the headlines really, just with the whole Djokovic thing. But yeah, I don't know, because there's transfer window at the moment for the football, so I guess there's a few things happening there. And then the rugby, yeah, rugby's just rugby, really. You just sort of get on with
it. Yeah. Have you taken a look at the supposed English team that Eddie has pulled together?
Not really. I think Eddie's a bit of a clown as well, to be honest with you, Eddie Jones. Just with yeah, it's nice to see him finally turning a curve, but it's been so long where he's just kept in players that he shouldn't have done, and is now finally giving youngsters a chance or giving them an opportunity to try and relive this, well, revive this England team, because we've been performing well. We've done very well, but we should have got over the line in certain instances, such as the World Cup, for instance. We were one of the best teams, and we just sort of lost it in the end. And there's just also, well, the Six Nations a couple of years ago when I think we came fifth or anything, we lost, and you're just like, you just gotta think a little bit more innovatively, basically, on the team selection. So.
While we're on sport, of course, we've got tanked by the Australians in the Ashes. Are your relatives coming through cock-a-hoop and saying, yeah, Fergus?
They're actually English. They're English or Irish people that moved over to Australia, so they're not too loud about it. But yeah, I guess. Yeah, I've been watching. I try and watch the roundup anyway of the Ashes in my lunch break or and when I get spare time. And yeah, it's not been particularly good out there. And I'm not a cricket fan. I sort of watch it from a neutral's point of view. I enjoy it, but yeah, it would have. I mean, yeah, it does seem like everything is falling apart a little bit out there. But they managed to get back in the latest test, I think, where they got a draw. but it would have been like, because they got, obviously Australia went through what was it? Oh yeah, their ex-captain had got into a bit of a scandal, and then they got this new Nick Cummings, or Pat Cummings, sorry, as their new captain. It would have been nice, I think, to have seen him on his first sort of outing as captain, to have got five over England. I think that would have been a quite historic moment. And so, even if it meant England losing 5-0, but I think those sort of moments in history, you just sort of go, look back and you go, actually, that is a very good time for this nation, or a very good time for this person. So,
yeah, there is a lot of crowing, isn't there, in cricket? I don't think we were kind to the Australians when we smashed them a couple of years ago.
No, yeah,
Triumphalism.
Mm.
Right. Let's go back to, if I may, because I am a bit disappointed, if you like, with the behaviour of the NHS, which, while it's boasted, and the Minister of Health has boasted about the virus, and that certainly was a great triumph, is a lot of other things. It seems to me to be failing as an organisation. I mean, I haven't seen I hadn't seen a doctor in almost a year, my doctor, and then I saw her like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and haven't seen her since. And I haven't a clue what's going on. At one time, I was able to sort of say, I've got this or I've got that. What should I do? Don't worry, Keith, or I better take a look at you, and so on and so forth. I'm a bit worried about what's happening to our medical service. But once again, if you like, I look at it from the fact that I'm an old fart, and you're. I'm not going to call you a young fart. You're a young, bright, if you like, a modern young man. So, what's your view of how the NHS is performing? Good points, bad points?
It definitely could be run more efficiently. I think, especially they use. Well, yeah, I've got friends who are now doctors, who went through university and are now in their early stages of being a doctor, basically. And yeah, there are some great points to the fact that it's a national health service, that everybody is entitled to some level of health, but it also comes with inefficiencies, and that the private side does win on, basically, that you can basically, if you want to see a doctor, you can go see a doctor when you want it. So that side of things. So I think it's just the way the system is run, unfortunately, and that's what happens in a sort of a socialist system, or an equitable system for everybody. It's hard to please everybody when you've only got a certain level of staffing, and especially and given that like pre-Christmas as well, the staffing crisis with COVID and stuff like that, it does. Yeah, it's just a tricky. It's how the system works. You can't. It's for a system so large as the NHS. It's hard for it to be perfect, basically. But there are certain ways it could be better. There could be less paperwork, for instance, or they're. Well, I read years ago that their software's like something that was around in 2000s or something like that, and you're a bit like,
yeah.
those little things where you could just have a slightly more quicker or something, for instance. So, for instance, like I recently re-registered from university with my local GP surgery, River Lodge Surgery, and it took 4 months for my medical records to get from the university to there, and it is just an electronic format, and you're like, how has this taken 4 months for just a bit for something which could just be an email?
Yeah.
It does just seem
yeah. I must confess is that I found a number of things that you mentioned the computer system when it was first installed, and I think it must still be operating that way. It was known as the hub, and it was famous for sending a reminder letter to you the day after your appointment. And actually, that did happen to me just before Christmas. I actually got a letter saying, don't forget your appointment, and it costs the NHS 150 quid every time you miss it, and so on. And when was the appointment? It was the day before. I mean, luckily I made a note of it in my diary, and I kept the appointment. But this reliance upon computers, I understand that how important computers are to us, but we've got to the point where we rely upon them. and that really is a worry to me. Because I mean, for instance, just a ping came through there from one of the credit card companies that I've always considered to be rather a good credit card company, and it said, you know, we've lost your email. Now, I've had the same email since 1990, I think, no, 1998, the Hotmail address. When they first came out, a friend who was a bit more savvy gave me that, and I've had it all that time, like 22 years, and now suddenly their computer is saying, we want to check on your email. We're not sure we've got it right. I mean, it all to me is a bit of a nonsense, and nobody bothers to change it. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
So there.
Yeah.
Right, it's 8:47. We're coming up towards the. We've been together for almost 50 minutes. I thank you for joining us, Fergus. I thought I might bail out just a little early this morning because I've been ill. We've got a couple of appointments and I don't want to miss them. So I'm going to make sure that I can catch the appropriate bus. So I always give you an opportunity just to raise anything that you feel that you want to raise, whether it's a new wine or whether it's down with the government. So anything to say this morning that you think is on your chest that you'd like to get off?
No, I guess I could talk about our wine of the week, which is quite exciting. So obviously dry January is a big thing for a lot of people within the UK. And while we don't stock non-alcoholic wines, our campaign for this month is Try January. So my company is called Camino del Vino, which stands for Wine Path in Spanish. And we try and look for uncommon and interesting wines from around the wine world. So throughout this month, we'll showcase a wine every single week and try and break down some certain barriers that potentially, or some unknown barriers that could potentially inhibit you from going forward and purchasing this wine. So for this week's wine, it's a Greek wine which has been aged underwater, which is quite an interesting one.
Wow.
I don't think.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's quite a new. It's a bit of a trend at the moment within the wine industry. And yeah, it's just very exciting. And basically, what aging a wine underwater was first done. Well, it was like something discovered by Verve Clicquot when a ship had come down, or it might have been Moe when a ship went down in the early 1900s, and they recently discovered the bottles of champagne at the bottom of the ocean, and they opened one up to see what it was like, and they found it to be very fresh and lively and still actually tasting very good. So this sort of kickstarted the trend of actually like, okay, think of the science behind aging something underwater. There's a constant pressure, so that if something stays in the same spot, the sea's not going to move. Definitely the mass around it is not going to. The pressure is going to stay the same. There's a lack of light, which is perfect for wine. So there's no ways that light can ruin the wine within the bottle. And it's also a constant temperature, pretty much. The seed doesn't fluctuate much, whereas in a cellar it can definitely vary between a few degrees, even going up a meter or a couple of meters varies the temperature in the room by half a degree. So if you've got something staying constant temperature, zero light, and constant pressure, this is perfect for preserving wine. So a lot of wineries are now discovering or investing in this sort of experimental aging process, and it's meant to keep the wine a lot more lively and a lot more fresher because of this. And so it's quite an interesting wine, especially from Greece as well. Greece's a region that is becoming more and more well known for producing really great quality wines. And so yeah, that's our wine of the week basically this week.
That sounds great. Is it a white or a red?
It's a white wine, but they also the winery is called Domaine Foivos, which is a very old Greek winery that's been worldwide known for producing fantastic wines. But they also, this one's a white just because it's a little bit more fresher, something to trial as well over the winter months, and maybe bring your January is the month where everybody books their holidays, so that's sort of a thinking behind that to try and promote it and just go, actually, if you want to taste the summer now, have this white wine as well. But yeah, they also do red versions as well that have been aged underwater. So
right. Well, they do throw the bottles into a net and dump it in the sea.
They stack them on top of one another in a big metal cage, and then they lower it down there. So there have been instances where they have lost this cage due to a storm. So there are certain instances where they have lost the cage just because of a big big storm. But yeah, this one they obviously haven't, and they've managed to retail the products basically. So yeah.
Well, that sounds very interesting. Actually, I like wines that are experimented. I mean, I'm particularly fond of having an ice vine. Where there's only a very narrow window that they can actually collect the grape and distill it. Yeah, I mean, I think not just discerning between a good red and a good white, etc., etc. There are lots of exciting things which your company is bringing to the market, and good luck to you. And certainly we want to hear about them. And hopefully, once we actually get cracking, if this lockdown ends, you'll have your own show again pretty soon, and you can bring some of these interesting wines to our viewers. But I'm glad that at least once a week you're able to talk about these things, because that is totally new to me. And I'm sure it's totally new to an awful lot of people who would consider themselves to be wine experts. Is wine aged? Is it in the sea or just in water?
So it can be in the sea. It can also be in a temperature-controlled baths, basically, as well. So it just depends on what the winery chooses, basically. So yeah.
Right. Interesting. And what's it called again?
It's just called, so it's by Domaine Foivus. It's called a Nautilus aged underwater. It's from Kefalonia.
Ah, Nautilus. That's great. And just because people don't keep a pen, spell out very slowly and very carefully your company and how they get in touch with you.
So the name of my company is called Camino del Vino, which is spelled CAMINO in the space, and then DEL with another space, and then VINO. And you can Google us or find us at caminodelvino.co.uk, or we've also got social media as well, which is Camino del Vino with an underscore, and that's our Instagram and Twitter handle as well. So yeah.
I shall wait with anticipation to try this aged underwater. Fergus, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. As usual, it's always good to get a view different to. How young am I? No, don't look. So we'll talk to you this time next week, but probably we'll have some conversation in the week as we move towards getting you back on air with. I think it's is it we call it liquid poetry or something of the sort.
Bottled poetry, I think it was called.
Right, there you go. That's we'll be returning very shortly. Okay, talk to you next week.
See you, Keith. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
All right, Fergus Wood. It is now 8:54. Once again, what's it doing outside? You can see my trusty things outside. The trees, no movement at all. It's a gentle breeze. It is going to hit about 10, and hopefully we will make sure that we keep on top of events over the next 24, 48 hours, because it may well be that a form of easing of lockdown is going to start. I think the magic date for a review is actually the 26th of January, and we are only in today, the 12th, is it, of the 11th. Let's see. Doesn't matter. I can't see. I can never remember the date. Well, I'll be damned. The Daily Express can't remember the date either. So just accept the fact that I think that it's the 11th today, and guess that by God, Jack DeManio has returned if I've got it wrong. The time I have not got wrong, it's 8:55. Tuesday the 11th. I was correct. Tuesday the 11th of January. There you go. DeManio wasn't influencing me at all. I actually guessed correctly. I am feeling a bit sparkier today. Hopefully I will improve throughout the day so that I'm back to my vitriolic self. Oh boy, did I take a pasting on Facebook for some people who I tried to say some nice things about a colleague, who was buried about a week ago. And of course, the old gossips get cracking as they pick on one or two words, and they drop a stitch as they do their knitting. But anyway, even when you try to be nice, there is always somebody that will find something wrong with it. So to hell with being nice, I shall come back to being my churlish, miserable, mean, big mouth self. And Rupert Lloyd Thomas, who I know is watching us from Wareham, I think it is, it's either in Wiltshire or somewhere towards the West Country, as I recall. But glad that you're around, Rupert, and I hope that all the family is well. Two things about Rupert. First of all, he's done many things in Lewis. He was a Louisian who buggered off to Canada for a while. And of course, Rupert being Rupert, had to take a challenge and went 5,000 miles across Canada in a smart car. Eventually returned to England, is now living in Wiltshire. And he comes up here for a couple of things. He is an initiator of rocket radio. And also, he is one of the main drivers, not in the sense of driving the car, but of the Firle Hill Climb, which last year they tried manfully to start, but couldn't make it. But hopefully Rupert will be back, and we'll have the Firle Hill Climb, which is a most exciting event, just in Firle, just outside Lewis, for very old cars climbing this steep hill. And I think it's called Bo Peep Hill. And in fact, the organisers are the Bo Peep Drivers Club. Now, I hope I've got that right, Rupert, but it's always good to have you there peeping in, because I know that you are the finest critic. You are always very positive criticism. You don't just snarl at us. So I hope that. The other thing I wanted to say is his wife has written, Annette has written a book about Mad Jack Fuller. She's become the expert on Mad Jack Fuller. And a lot of people will say, who is Mad Jack Fuller? Well, if you live in the eastern part of Sussex, you would know Fuller very well, because a lot of his follies are there. But a lot of the good things that he did, like lifeboats and lighthouses and so on, he's a very wealthy man. And God help us, he made his money from slavery. But he was a real character, an absolute character, and known as Mad Jack. And Rupert's wife has written a book, and actually I must get hold of Rupert and his wife in the next couple of days or so, invite them on so that we can discuss that book, because if you don't know about Mad Jack, you really should. And there are relatives of the Fullers living here in Lewis still, and he was married at Hamsey in the his father and mother were married in Hamsey, just outside Lewis on the island there in the church. A beautiful church which is still active a couple of times a year. A small church, but it's a Saxon church, I believe. It was there before the Normans came here. But there we are. That's a bit about Lewis. That's a bit about Rupert Lloyd Thomas, one of the great characters around town. Missed, but will return one day. Watch for the sign of Rupert. He will return. That's it for this morning. Thank you very much for being with me and with Fergus. I hope that you learned one or two things before you switched off. But we'll be back tomorrow. Till then, toodles.